from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast.
Coming up today on Ag Day, as farmers navigate the new year, one ag banker has tips to help farmers succeed, and it all starts with land.
Determine if it is a cash flow positive or cash flow negative to you.
In agribusiness, China isn't the only country with a hunger for ag goods.
And by 2022, India is actually going to outpopulate them.
We'll tell you what it could mean for soybean prices in the year ahead. And forget Meatless Mondays. One restaurant chain is helping consumers satisfy their growing appetite for a meatless burger every day of the week.
Ag Day, presented by the Chevy Silverado. High-strength steel for high-strength dependability.
Good morning, I'm Tyne Morgan in for Clinton Griffiths. Farmers and ranchers in the South appear to be weathering financial hardships with overall loan demand declining. But as dryness sets in, bankers are concerned it could have an impact on both livestock and crop yields this year. The Dallas Federal Reserve releasing its fourth quarter ag survey. It shows overall loan demand fell for a ninth consecutive month, but the amount of operating loans requested did tick higher. The Fed says loan renewals and extensions also increased, but loan repayments stabilized after falling during Q3. Now looking at farmland values, ranchland and dryland values rose during that quarter compared to the previous year, with dryland up 4% and ranchland up 3.8%. But most of the Texas bankers surveyed said they were concerned about dryness. One banker from District 3, or the northern lower plains, said rainfall from October and November was 1/4 of an inch total. Virtually no cattle had been turned out on wheat, and 80% of the wheat planted in the county hadn't even emerged. It's better yields in some areas that are helping farmers survive the headwinds in agriculture. But as prices struggle, one ag lender says there are steps that can be taken now to navigate the new year. Here's Betsy Gibbon.
As farmers and ranchers kick off another year, financial planning is also underway. And one ag banker wants to help farmers successfully navigate 2018. Alan Hoskins is the CEO of American Farm Mortgage. He says there are 4 key points to keep in mind, and it all starts with taking a hard look at land.
Determine if it is a cash flow positive or cash flow negative to you, and don't just look at this year. Go back and look at multiple years so that you really see the trend. Look at the rent that you're paying and determine if it really makes sense to continue to have that.
Hoskins says it's also imperative that farmers reevaluate living expenses.
No one is saying that you're having to cut it, but at least know what it is to make sure that where those dollars are going are indeed the best use of those dollars.
He says when trying to manage commodity markets, it's important to have a marketing plan in place.
Make sure that you have one in place before 2018. And I think if you look historically over the last couple of years, that has been the determining factor between profitable operations and individuals or operations who have struggled.
And a marketing plan may require the influence of someone who specializes in that area, which leads to his fourth and final tip.
Make sure that you have the discussions with your banker, with your accountant, with your attorney, with your crop insurance person, with your merchandiser. None of those individuals are going to tell you how to run your operation, but what they can do is give you insight into their area of specialty. The farmer is the CEO of the company. And it's always wonderful when a CEO reaches out for input. They get to make the final decision, but it's going to make them sleep a lot better at night knowing that they have utilized input from individuals who have areas of specialty.
Hoskins says while 2018 is full of unknowns, farmers should prepare and control what they can in order to survive the possible bumps along the way. Reporting for Ag Day, I'm Betsy Gibbon.
Thanks, Betsy. Well, it's colder in parts of Florida this week than Alaska, and the state's citrus crop could feel it. Some pockets of north central Florida are seeing snow, but there's a threat of frost Thursday and Friday morning in much of the citrus growing areas too. Radiant Solutions says the frost could impact the citrus crop in the state, but projects the damage to be mild.
It doesn't look like we're going to have a hard freeze across any of the major citrus growing areas, although that, like you said, that crop is more vulnerable than usual given the hurricane damage that we saw earlier this year. But I still think even given that, we're not going to see any significant damage because temperatures are just not going to get quite cold enough, maybe into the low 30s or even upper 20s, but I don't expect a hard freeze across the major growing areas.
It's been a tough season for the state. Estimates say 70% of Florida's citrus crop was impacted by Hurricane Irma in September. Well, winter wheat conditions took a dive in Kansas. According to the latest state report, conditions fell 14 points in the good to excellent category. That was from when the last survey was released in November. Now, those numbers don't account for possible damage from the ongoing frigid temperatures in the plains. As we first reported Wednesday, the dryness and lack of snowpack in the plains combined with brutally cold weather could prove to be a lethal combination for winter wheat. Radiant Solutions says a quarter of the wheat crop could be in jeopardy of winter kill. Now, the Kansas Wheat Commission saying, quote, "We are really concerned about winter kill in wheat. Later planted wheat with poorly developed root systems due to lack of moisture, dry soil conditions, and lack of snow cover all make the wheat more vulnerable to low temperatures." But Oklahoma State small grain specialist telling AgDay that it's a little early to peg damage. He says, quote, "Winter kill will be on a field-by-field basis, and it will be early to mid-February for them to know the extent of any damage." But as of right now, he says he's not too worried about the cold for the crop in Oklahoma. Well, the cold continues, but it can make for some picturesque scenery. Cindy Clausen is filling in today and joins us now with more. Good morning, Cindy.
Good morning, Tyne. Nick Wilhelm in Nebraska is feeding some hungry cows. He said it was roughly 10 below outside when he was feeding, but a balmy 18 by the afternoon on Tuesday. Thankfully, that area is expected to see a warm up by the end of the week. And congratulations to our January Ag Day Facebook cover photo winner, Norm Ray of Green Bay, Wisconsin. Norm sent us this photo where his daughter boards her horse Charm, who's pictured on the far right. This was taken in rural northeastern Wisconsin, right off of Lake Michigan. Taking a look at our wind forecast as we head through the day today, we've got a big storm system that's moving up the east coast, and that's really going to be the focus of the strongest winds. We only go to 25 plus on our map, but we're going to be seeing wind gusts even up to perhaps 50 miles per hour in spots along the northeastern United States with this really strong storm. So that's going to be the focus over the next 24 hours. We'll have your national forecast in just a few minutes, but for now, here are some hometown temps.
Ever wake up wondering what does today's weather have in store? Well, with weather updates, it delivers the local forecast right to your cell phone each morning to make preparing for the day easier. Just text Weather 6 to 31313 to get started.
Still to come, what's playing in soybean prices' favor in the new year? That's analysis. Plus, why one restaurant chain's decision to serve up a meatless burger could play into a larger trend for the millennial generation. Agribusiness, a mixed day in Chicago. To find out why, let's head to the floor of the CME.
Hi, it's been generally a sideways trade for the grain markets today, with the lone exception being really the Kansas City wheat contract, which has been trading higher over the course of the day, mostly 5 or 6 cents higher going into the close. Of course, the KC wheat market is feeling the effects of all the winter cold and the cold weather seen out in the Great Plains. And also the crop ratings that came out yesterday for Great Plains states showing that the winter wheat crops there are really in tough shape. Thanks very much. This is Jack Scoville. I'm Vice President of Price Futures Group here on the CME Group floor with some comments for the markets.
Well, soybeans saw some green in Chicago Wednesday, but are strong prices a trend that could continue throughout the new year? Clinton Griffiths is in search of the answer.
Doug Whirling-Bauer Trading, our guest here today, talking about the soybean market, Doug. And, you know, as we look forward into 18, we see what the price is. We see what anticipated acreage is going to be up again, we think, or at least as good as it was. What do you see out there on the horizon for this soybean market?
Well, the beans, one of the biggest things we see year over year is demand just continues to exceed expectations.
Okay.
And one of those big things, obviously, is China. You know, for example, USDA says they're going to import 97 million tons. They're probably more likely over 100, 103. Now, back in 2000, and this example will kind of set the tone of what I'm getting at, You know, Brazil was just coming online. 44 million metric tons was a huge crop. Beans were $5.
Right.
Now they're growing 108 million metric tons, and we're at $10 beans. You know, just stop and think about that. Think about how much global consumption has increased over a decade and a half, and it's going to continue to do so. And so we have a country over there, China, who has all this protein consumption, whether it's their livestock or their demand in this middle class that's growing that wants more and more and more.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for Brazil, you can imagine what the price of beans would be right now. And the last thing I'll leave you with is, you know, we're so focused on China and how much they use, and by 2022, India is actually going to outpopulate them. And we don't even talk about India in any of our discussions. We're so China focused. So,
right.
You know, there's some very good things globally from a demand standpoint that is always catching up. It's always staying lock and step with supply. Good out ahead. We're just, some type of a hiccup could make that market a little bit more of immediately interesting, as opposed to like some of the other markets like corn or wheat.
Right, yeah. Well, as we watch these acreage numbers come out in the next year or so and see that demand continue and the acreage number continue to go up, it's going to be interesting to watch. Doug, thank you for being here. We'll be back with more Ag Day in just a minute.
For a free 2-week trial to Jim's daily global market letter, call Bauer Trading toll free at 1-800-533-8045. Ag Day, brought to you by new Delaro fungicide for corn and soybeans. Achieve personal best yields.
Welcome back to Ag Day. Time now to check weather with meteorologist Cindy Klassen. Cindy, the first time I've seen you in the new year.
Yes.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well.
Hopefully you enjoyed some time over the holidays with your family.
A little bit, but there was some work in between there as well, as there always is. But boy, we were working hard in all the weather labs across the country, especially for folks in the Northeast. Check out this system. It's a very strong, what we call kind of an East Coast bomb, because the pressure is just dropping so quickly. But that's going to be like a nor'easter going up the East Coast, and it's going to be snow along the coast. Normally we might see a little bit of rain out of this, but the temperatures obviously have been very, very cold in much of the eastern, well, 2/3 of the United States. Elsewhere, we're going to be seeing lake effect snow. Could be heavy in spots, especially off Lake Michigan and off over towards Buffalo as you get over towards Lake Erie and Lake Ontario as well. Not a lot going on in the Plain States and the Rockies as well, but we're going to see some more moisture coming into the Pacific Northwest as well. There goes that low pressure system continuing its northward track. Again, not a lot going on in the nation's midsection. It's going to be fairly quiet, especially away from the Great Lakes. High pressure will settle in, and that will help to keep things on the dry side. We'll start to see that rain and upper elevation snow moving into the Pacific Northwest. Now, here's your precipitation estimate. The past 24 hours, kind of right over here in the mid-Atlantic states. Not a ton anywhere else, but then as we add on the next 24 hours, look at that. We're looking at least liquid precipitation to be 1 to even 2 inches in some of those spots, and of course along the west coast as well. But when you factor in how much snow, this is snow down in Georgia, folks, and all the way up the eastern mid-Atlantic. That's how cold the air has been, and that's going to continue all the way up the east coast. So that's where the big heavy snows are expected to be as we head through the next 24 hours. Temperature-wise, we're still cold, especially in the northeastern quadrant of the United States. 6 below in Sault Ste. Marie. We're seeing 10 in Chicago today. Warm in the southwest. That's where the warm air has been remaining. Heading into the overnight hours, we're going to see those low temperatures dipping down below 0 in spots. Very cold as you get only in the teens across the northeastern United States. You got all that snow coming down. 20s and 30s even down into Texas. And then as we head into tomorrow, we're going to see similar temperatures as far as high temperatures are concerned in the Great Lakes and into the northeast, some 40s and 50s along the southwestern part of the United States. That's a look at your national forecast. Now let's check on the weather where you live. Marbletown, Wyoming, sunny and a bit warmer for you today with a high temperature of 39 degrees. Buchanan, Michigan, snow, heavy at times with a high of 15. And then Madison, Maine, heavy snow with windy conditions, a high of 23.
Still to come, an alarming trend in millennial eating habits, and it's cattle producers who should take note. Plus, it's a meatless burger growing in popularity, and now one major restaurant chain is jumping on board.
Ag Day, brought to you by Prosaro fungicide from
Well, the U.S. Department of Agriculture is taking a hard look at millennial buying and eating habits, and it turns out that age group prefers to buy fruits and vegetables over meat. USDA found that millennials spend the smallest share of their food budgets on items like grains and meat, both red and white meat. The study also found millennials will buy red meat as their income rises, but the trend to move away from meat is something that's a growing concern with each younger generation. And economists say that's why the U.S. needs to focus on bolstering meat exports versus domestic consumption. Now, Walmart, the largest grocer in the world, says millennials' purchases revolve around transparency.
We also, in a trend, see the millennial consumer rising into purchase power. So the millennial consumer will be 30% of retail sales by the year 2020. They're much more inclined to put their purchase power in their dollars along with their beliefs and align with brands and companies that work on things that they care about.
Now, millennials are technically defined as those born between the early 80s and the mid-90s. Well, a major restaurant chain is jumping on the meatless burger bandwagon, and they say it's all backed by consumer demand. According to our reporting partners at Drovers, TGI Fridays has announced it will take its Beyond Meat burger to its 469 restaurants nationwide.
The Beyond Meat burger is a plant-based product that the company tested at a handful of locations in October. The Beyond Burger patty can be substituted for any existing builds from the TGI Fridays Burger Bar menu.
The company's culinary director says TGIF is appealing to the food-forward consumers in 2018. He says, quote, in answering guests' demand for nutritional menu items that fit their lifestyle needs, we saw an opportunity to introduce newly expanded options like plant-based protein. Beyond Meat is leading the way in creating a juicy and delicious product that gives guests the sensory experience of a traditional burger without sacrificing taste. End quote. Now, the company says since May, the Beyond Burger has seen triple-digit growth. Tyson Foods owns 5% stake in the meatless burger. Still to come, there's an art to being the best bird dog in the nation. Charles Denny will point us in the right direction next.
AgDay, brought to you by Corvus, the #1 pre-emergence corn herbicide.
Well, some of the most beautiful canines are also accomplished hunters. English setters, commonly called bird dogs in Tennessee, are graceful creatures with sharp senses. Charles Denny takes us to a national competition for bird dogs where these athletic animals show their skill.
Sensing there's a flock of quail just feet away, this dog freezes, intensely focused, nose straight ahead, body completely rigid. These are bird dogs, with a more formal name of English setter or English pointer. And that's exactly what they're doing here, pointing to the prey.
They have to have a great mind. They have to have a great nose, but a great nose is no good without the great mind. They also have to have the physical attributes to make these 3 hours and still look pretty good at the end of it.
That's how long this competition lasts for Richardson's Canine, one of 43 entrants in the National Bird Dog Trials at Ames Plantation. A pair of dogs are set loose to find birds, followed by a bevy of humans on horseback. Judges award points for pointing, a test of skill, strength, and endurance, all to determine who will be the alpha dog.
Growing up in Middle Tennessee, my dad and grandfather often had bird dogs on our farm. They're beautiful, sweet animals, loyal, and crazy athletes. They can run like the wind and easily jump over a 6-foot-tall fence.
They're about like Michael Jordan would be in basketball. To really be consistent in the winners, they're really an exception. A lot of them are bred for that.
Ames Plantation is privately owned land with thousands of acres made available to the UT Institute of Agriculture, one of its 10 ag research centers statewide. This was the 102nd time Ames has hosted this competition.
It is the home of the national championship. Would be equivalent to the Super Bowl or the World Series. You know, this is it for these field trialers.
Each dog needed at least 2 previous wins just to be here. So it's an honor to compete for a national championship. Get your nose in the game, just point the way. This is Charles Denny reporting.
Thanks, Charles. Now, he says the next trial at Ames Plantation starts February 12th and runs for about 2 weeks. This competition first started in Mississippi 119 years ago. Well, that's all the time we have this morning. We're so glad you tuned in. Have a great day in Farm Country.